The Trip. Chapter 4. Marcus. He woke to the low hum of his fridge and the buzz of a Slack notification he ignored twice before checking. Marcus' Williamsburg loft was both curated and unmanageable, a mix of industrial shelving, 3 thriving plants, 2 dying ones, and a half-built prototype battery pack on the coffee table. His bed was unmade. His desk was half covered in empty espresso cups. He told himself it was organized entropy, though even he knew that phrase was just something he'd lifted from an old TED Talk. The first real thought that cut through the fog. Runway. Bright Loop Energy had 9 months left before the cash dried up. Less if they kept hiring at the current pace. He rolled out of bed, stepped over a coiled extension cord and padded barefoot to the kitchen counter. His phone lit up with 3 new emails flagged urgent. One from an investor in San Francisco asking about international expansion. One from a potential client in Berlin who wanted guarantees Marcus couldn't give. And one from his co-founder Eric. Call me. It's about payroll. He made coffee instead. By 8:03, he was showered, dressed, and scanning his reflection in the cracked mirror near the door. Black jeans, white t-shirt, jacket that looked casual but cost enough to count. Blonde hair slightly undone, glasses in hand, sneakers he pretended were beat up by choice. The trick was to look like he hadn't tried, even though he always had. The L train was half broken, as usual. He caught the third one that showed up, jammed between a girl with a film camera and a man reading a printout of legal documents like the train was his office. Marcus stood still, earphones in but no music playing, thinking about the deck he had to present this afternoon. 32 slides. Half of them made sense. The other half were smoke. By Union Square, he had already drafted a mental list of everything he would say and half the things he'd never admit. At 9:15, he stepped into Bright Loop's Flatiron office, 2nd floor, open plan, the kind of space that looked better on Instagram than in real life. Exposed brick, motivational posters no one took seriously, whiteboards covered in equations, half erased. Eric was waiting at his desk. "We're cutting close," he said. "No hello?" Marcus dropped his bag. "How close?" 2 payrolls if we don't land the contract. Marcus exhaled. "So we land it." Eric shook his head. "That's not a strategy. It's the only one we've got." The investor had chosen ABC Kitchen on Union Square for the lunch meeting. It was always they who picked. Farm to table, all reclaimed wood tables and whitewashed brick, the kind of place that pretended not to care about decor but still managed to feel curated for social media. The menu listed the farms in smaller print beneath the dishes, as if provenance could substitute for taste. Marcus arrived 5 minutes late on purpose. Not dramatically late, but enough to let the balance tilt. The investor was already there, sipping sparkling water with a slice of lime that felt performative. Mid-40s, navy blazer, white sneakers. The uniform of someone who wanted you to know he'd made his money but still believed in disruption. "Marcus," he said, standing to shake his hand. "Appreciate you making the time." Marcus smiled. "Always." They ordered salads neither of them wanted, and coffee they both needed. The conversation moved in shorthand. Funding rounds, regulatory noise, the inevitability of consolidation. Words like runway and burn hung in the air like casual smoke, though both of them knew they were fire alarms. The investor leaned forward. 9 months left, right? Marcus kept his face still. "Depends on how you model it." "That's what worries me." Marcus didn't flinch. "That's what excites me." A pause, long enough to feel like a move. The investor smirked. "You're still good at this." Marcus shrugged, pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose. "I'm still here." The salads arrived. Neither touched them. Marcus forked one cherry tomato just to move it around his plate. The investor lowered his voice. There's chatter about Stratinia Holdings circling your space. Marcus froze the tomato mid-air. They're everywhere. Not everywhere, the investor said. They're looking at clean storage. They're not subtle about it. Marcus set the fork down. Then we're not subtle either. The lunch lasted 45 minutes but felt like 2 hours. At the end, the investor clapped him on the shoulder and said, "Keep me updated." "Seriously, don't let me read about you in TechCrunch before I hear it from you." Marcus forced a grin. "Depends who publishes faster." They split the check even though Marcus knew he couldn't afford it. He signed the receipt with a flourish like it didn't matter. Outside, Union Square was alive with noise. Buskers, traffic, a protest about something he didn't catch. Marcus slipped his earphones back in and let the noise dissolve. He needed to move. He headed south, cutting across Broadway, walking faster than the crowd. Every step was a reminder. 2 payrolls, maybe less. By the time he got back to the office, the salads were still sitting in his stomach like ballast. He opened his laptop, pulled up the deck, and stared at the first slide. Bright Loop Energy, the future of energy storage. He deleted the subtitle twice, typed it back once, deleted it again. Eric walked past his desk. "You're going to wear a hole in the screen." Marcus didn't look up. Better there than in the runway. His Williamsburg roof was his decompression chamber, the kind of space you didn't curate, you just inherited. Tar paper underfoot, a chain link railing, the skyline rising sharp against the early autumn haze. A neighbor 2 buildings over was playing Frank Ocean just loud enough to make the evening air feel slower. Marcus leaned against the rail with a can of seltzer he'd pulled from the office fridge on his way out. He told himself he didn't need another drink. He told himself a lot of things. Below, Bedford Avenue was starting its evening tempo. Commuters spilling out of the L, bikes weaving between delivery trucks, couples deciding between ramen or pizza like it mattered. He opened his phone, thumb hovered over the colony thread. Ethan had already sent a message that morning. Thursday. Same time. Marcus typed back, "Depends if I survive the week." Ethan's reply came 30 seconds later. "Not my problem. Booth will be full either way." Marcus laughed out loud. A neighbor on the adjacent roof looked up, startled, then went back to her cigarette. He scrolled to Camille's contact, typed, "You around?" Deleted it. Typed again, "Thinking about Friday's opening." Deleted that too. Finally, just hit call. She answered on the second ring. "Marcus?" "Camille." "How's the show prep?" A pause, then her measured voice. "It's under control." Marcus smirked. "That's curator code for chaos." Another pause, softer this time. "Maybe. But it's the kind of chaos I like." They talked for 3 minutes, about nothing and everything. A donor who was being difficult, Marcus's endless pitch deck, the quality of light in the city that week. The kind of conversation that sounded like static to outsiders but carried weight if you were the one speaking. When she hung up, Marcus stayed on the line for a few seconds, listening to the dead air. He dropped into a lawn chair that wobbled on one uneven leg, pulled a notebook from his bag, and scribbled a few lines he might use in tomorrow's pitch. Energy storage isn't a commodity. It's sovereignty. He circled the word twice, underlined it once. His phone buzzed again. A new message, not Camille, Charlotte. "Got your deck. Call me tonight. Some of it works, some of it doesn't." He read it twice, smirked, and typed back, "Appreciate the optimism." No reply. The sun slipped behind the skyline, turning the glass into 1,000 mirrors. Marcus stayed until it was too dark to see his notes. Later that night at the Mr. Fong's bar, Lower East Side. It is one of those places that still felt like a secret even though it hadn't been for years. Dim light, red banquettes, music just loud enough to erase the silences in bad conversations. Marcus liked it for the edges, the worn floorboards, the cash-only cocktails. Eric was already at a table near the back, nursing a whiskey with a look that wasn't quite resignation but was close. Marcus slid into the booth across from him, ordered a beer he didn't want, and dropped his jacket onto the seat beside him. Eric didn't waste time. "I'm serious about payroll, man. We're on fumes." Marcus leaned back. "You said that this morning. And I'll keep saying it until you hear me. 2 months of burn at most, unless you want to tell people their checks are coming in equity." Marcus smirked. "That's the founder's discount." Eric didn't smile. The beer arrived. Marcus let it sit. He tapped his phone on the table, screen down, then finally looked at his co-founder. "Eric, you knew this wasn't going to be easy." "I knew it wasn't going to be sane. You've been running the hype machine non-stop, and yeah, you're good at it. But there's a gap between the story and the cells." Marcus exhaled through his nose. He hated when Eric used words like cells in public. Too technical, too raw. "Cells will catch up," Marcus said. "Investors buy narrative first, hardware second." Eric shook his head. "Not when the hardware runs the grid." They sat in silence for a while, each letting the weight of the other's words settle. The music shifted into something more percussive, the kind of track you didn't notice until you realized you were moving your head with it. Marcus finally picked up his beer, took a long drink, and set it down harder than he meant to. "I'm not wrong," he said. Eric looked at him for a long beat. "You're not wrong. You're just not right enough." Later, they walked out onto Madison Street, the air damp and carrying the smell of hot oil from a dumpling shop still open. Marcus pulled his jacket tight. Eric lit a cigarette. "You ever think about just shutting it down?" Eric asked, smoke curling into the streetlight. Marcus laughed without humor. "Every day." "And?" "And every day I don't." On the subway back to Brooklyn, Marcus stood the whole ride, hand around a pole, eyes on his reflection in the black window. The car was mostly empty. A man asleep against the door, a couple whispering in French. Marcus's phone buzzed twice. He pulled it out. A message from Charlotte. "You need to stop overselling energy storage as independence. It's too abstract. Investors don't buy poetry." Marcus typed back. "You'd be surprised." Deleted it. Typed again. "Appreciate the feedback." Sent. Another buzz. Alice in the Colony thread. "If Marcus is late again this week, drinks are on him." Marcus smiled despite himself, dropped the phone back in his pocket, and closed his eyes as the train lurched forward. Close to midnight, he was back in Williamsburg. The loft was dim, except for the glow of his laptop, open but unused. Marcus had kicked off his sneakers, left them half under the couch, and stretched himself across the floor with his notebook. The pages were a mess of arrows, underlined words, half-finished diagrams that looked like blueprints if you squinted hard enough. Runway, cells, narrative. He circled sovereignty again, darker this time, until the paper nearly tore. On the coffee table, 2 espresso cups from earlier had dried into rings. Next to them, the battery prototype, plastic casing, wires exposed, sat like an accusation. Eric wasn't wrong. Narrative could only stretch so far. Hardware didn't lie. He picked it up, turned it over in his hands, set it down again. He grabbed his phone, opened the voice memo app. "Brightloop isn't a product," he said quietly, pacing. "It's a dare. Energy storage is leverage, the buffer between blackout and resilience. The grid's already dead. People just don't know it yet." He listened once, winced, and saved it anyway. The loft felt too quiet. He opened Spotify, scrolled through a playlist called Pitch Mode, then stopped himself. Too obvious. He closed it, walked barefoot to the window, leaned on the sill. Manhattan was a skyline of promises across the river. All light, no detail. He thought of the investor at ABC Kitchen. The way he'd said, 9 months left, right? Like it was a line rehearsed 100 times before. Marcus whispered to himself, 9 months is a lifetime. But even he didn't believe it. The loft was heavy with silence, broken only by the faint hum of the fridge and the occasional rattle of pipes. Marcus stretched across the floorboards, the wood cool against his back, notebook open beside him like an unwanted companion. Pages filled with phrases circled, underlined, abandoned. He circled sovereignty again, darker this time, until the paper nearly tore. The word felt like graffiti he couldn't scrub off. His phone pulsed against his chest with new mail. Another investor name, familiar, predictable. He didn't open it. He already knew the tone, cautious, hedged, waiting for someone else to move first. Herd instincts in expensive suits. He sat up, restless, and drifted to the window. Outside, Bedford Avenue was subdued. A bike courier rolled by with blinking red lights, a pair of drunk college kids stumbled toward Kellogg's diner, and someone leaned out of a window across the street to smoke, ember glowing in the dark. Williamsburg wasn't asleep. It was holding its breath. Marcus pressed his forehead to the glass. Manhattan glimmered across the water, towers stabbing through the haze. So much light, so little detail. It reminded him of his own pitch decks, bright, confident, evasive. He thought about Eric's cigarette smoke curling into the night outside Mr. Fong's. You're not wrong. You're just not right enough. He hated how true it sounded now, hours later. Back at the coffee table, the prototype stared at him. This was supposed to be the future. Instead, it felt like proof of everything Eric worried about: ambition outpacing execution. He pulled on a hoodie and went down to the street. The air smelled of wet pavement and fried food. A bodega on the corner had its lights still on, fluorescent and endless. Inside, a man stacked bread onto a shelf while the radio played salsa too loud for the hour. Marcus bought another seltzer he didn't want, walked out, cracked it open just to have something in his hand. A delivery truck idled with its hazard lights blinking. A stray cat wove between the tires like it owned the block. Marcus walked 2 blocks, then 3, before circling back to his building. He wasn't sure if he'd gone out to clear his head or to remind himself the city kept moving, with or without him. On the roof, the tar paper still held the day's heat. He leaned against the railing, scrolling through his phone. The colony thread was alive even at this hour. Alice posting like she always did when she couldn't sleep. If Ethan orders oysters first, we riot. Camille's probably already there, curating the playlist in her head. That last one had 5 likes. Marcus stared at it too long, thumb hovering. He typed a reply to Alice's earlier suggestion: drinks would be on him. Jokes on you. I'm early tomorrow. Deleted it. Typed again, not paying, but I'll bring the energy. Deleted that too. Finally just sent, try me. Alice responded in under a minute, a laughing emoji, then, we always do. Camille liked it. Ethan followed with a single period, his version of approval. Charlotte stayed silent, but Marcus imagined her rolling her eyes and filing it away as data. It was nothing, and it was everything. The tension in his chest loosened just enough for him to breathe deeper. He let the phone slip into his pocket and turned his gaze back to Manhattan. The skyline didn't look quite so accusatory now. Still sharp, still unreachable, but less of a verdict. Back downstairs, he lay on the couch, prototype on the table. His eyelids burned with exhaustion, but sleep refused. He opened Instagram, scrolled through accounts he didn't care about, stopped when he hit Camille's story. He smiled, closed the app. The city buzzed faintly through the walls, distant sirens, a muffled bass line from someone's apartment, the constant thrum of a place that never offered silence. Marcus whispered the line he hadn't sent earlier, almost to himself. I'll bring the energy. This time, it didn't sound like bravado, and with the lights still on, clothes still on, prototype still there, he let himself drift toward the thought of tomorrow. Not sleep, but close enough.